Hello, John Denver fans. Corinne Smith here, continuing our analysis of John's albums in chronological order as they first appeared back when we were young. In our last episode, we covered the year 1977 with two main albums, a couple of tangents with international recordings and with later releases of concerts from that year. This episode will be no different. We got two main albums to talk about. One came out in January 1979. Second one arrived in the last part of 1979. So two albums in 1979. We're also going to add an international album as well as a concert album. You may not have heard of either one of them. I hadn't known of them until I did the research for this episode. So, launching right in, you will remember that we already talked about John Denver's greatest hits albums from 1973 and his second greatest hits album that came out in 1977, and we also saw how the second one was released later in Australia with a different cover and a couple of different songs and the changes in the set list. Well, in 1978, in Germany, RCA put together Henry John Deutschendorf, not John Denver. Isn't that cool? Known as John Denver. It's a double record set of Seine große Erfolge, his biggest successes, his biggest hits, with select song titles in English, und viele andere, many more, full song titles and credits on the back, all in English, and then on the inside, photos of all of his previous albums and an extensive biography of John written auf Deutsch. Now, I didn't know about this album, and I don't know who wrote that bio. I don't know if it was something that was translated from an English piece or if it was specifically written for this double record set. I haven't had time to puzzle it out completely, even though I do have a German background. If you had high school or college German, you should be able to figure out most of this. Here's part of it. John Denver, der sanfte Country-Sänger mit den blonden Ponyfransen über der charakteristischen Nickelbrille, schlug mit seiner geradlinigen Art schon einige Rekorde im amerikanischen Showgeschäft. Und geradlinig ist wohl auch eine angemessene Umschreibung für eine Kombination aus innocent und tough. Ist unverdorben genug, seinen idealistischen, patriotischen und romantischen Ambitionen in seinen Liedern freien Lauf zu lassen. Und ist konsequent genug, seit Jahren an seinen Prinzipien festzuhalten. There you go. He's a combination of innocence and toughness. Okay. What I love about this album is that they used his real legal name. He never changed it, Henry John Deutschendorf, to identify with the German audience. Only a few generations beforehand, his ancestors were over there. I should mention that these vinyl records themselves, the actual vinyl, I'm not going to pull it out, have a copyright date of 1978, which is why I'm talking about it today. On the album cover itself, though, it says 1983. So I don't know. I guess they pressed the vinyl first and they figured out the packaging later. Again, I don't know the details for the delay. Anyway, what do we have in this double record set of Seine große Erfolge? Well, the first record is really this, and the second record is really this. The times match exactly for this one. The times are pretty close on this one, so if there's any, and I didn't go back and forth to check. I decided, enough is enough. If they didn't use the exact originals from this, they're pretty close. Okay, so that's what it is. It's a double record set from Germany, and Henry John Deutschendorf, not John Denver, from 1978 is our opening tangent for today. Continuing on. Now, in January 1979, John released an album called John Denver, JD. What's this album called? I see references usually that it is a self-titled album, so I'm going to call it JD. It's difficult to tell with the design work on there. Cover has a simple design with John and his guitar on the front, and then JD insignia on the back. And then on the inside, we got all the lyrics and credits, yay, and a very nice picture of John in a meadow. Okay, this album has 11 songs on it. John wrote 6 of them. Let's go through them in order. First of all, Downhill Stuff. Starts out sounding like a country song, and then it switches to rock or rockabilly. And it's John's attempt to write a metaphoric song about downhill skiing, what it's like to go downhill. Sweet Melinda is a trucker kind of song, written by Steve Gillette and Mark McKechnie. What's on Your Mind? This is a John Denver song, and you could say it's a more typical song from him in sound. It's about relationships, wondering what the other person is thinking. Why aren't you obviously thinking the same way that they are? Etc., etc., etc. It's a good song. What's on Your Mind? Next up is Joseph and Joe, which sounds like a back and forth comparison of 2 people named Joseph and Joe. Or is it? Here's what John had to say about Joseph and Joe. According to our wonderful reference, John Denver, The Complete Lyrics, edited by Milt Oken. Joseph and Joe has to do with 2 wonderful friends of mine. One of them is Joe Henry, who I've written so many songs with. Joe is a cowboy. Joe Frazier, who is Joseph in the song, is an old friend from the days of the Mitchell Trio. Now he's an Episcopalian priest. A few summers ago, Joseph and Joe both happened to show up in Aspen at the same time to visit with Annie and me. It was a wonderful little circle that we had together. The song came out of that circle. It's just a scenario. It also expresses the feeling that you can't go any place you haven't been to already, even in the sense that everything is new and there are so many places to go. If you picture it in your mind or know of it, the truth is you're already there. You just have to take the physical steps to get there. You know everything. You just have to break down the barriers to your knowing. Barriers that are in us because we are human beings. Barriers implanted in us by our parents and our environment and the world we live in. We have to break through all of that to get back to the truth, back to the center. That's the explanation for Joseph and Joe. Much more of a song than just a comparison between 2 people who share a similar first name. Wow. All right. Then we have the song Life is So Good, which is a simple song with a simple refrain. Life is so good. Repeated over and over again. And then we come to Berkeley Woman. Should sound familiar. It's a song written by Brian Bowers, and John first gave us that song on the Farewell Andromeda album a few years earlier in 1973. So the version of Berkeley Woman on here was recorded live during his concert tour in the spring of 1978. But isn't this an interesting addition to this newer album? We know that John revised his songs and the way he performed them throughout his years, and his career evolved, his music evolved, the way he wanted to present it evolved. And we know that he revised his songs all along. But I think, other than the greatest hits albums, of course, the greatest hits albums, of course, this is the first time he took an older song from a previous album and revised it and put it on a newer album. This version of Berkeley Woman has a fuller instrumentation than this one, so it's an interesting choice. And it concludes the first side of this album. The second side begins with John rocking out and Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. He does a good job of it. And I just can't help thinking of Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly in the first Back to the Future movie whenever I hear this song. And 1979 was 6 years before Back to the Future came out. So anyway, John does a good job of it here. Then we are brought back down with a slower song of You're So Beautiful, where John expresses his love for his family and for the world around him. Then the song South Wind, written by Herb Peterson, I think is kind of nice. And then we have, second to last song on the album here is Garden Song, written by Dave Mallett, a folk singer and songwriter from Maine. Dave Mallett is still producing and performing today. Now, when you first hear Garden Song, you may think that John wrote it or that Pete Seeger wrote it, because that's kind of what it sounds like. Inch by inch, row by row, honesty my garden grow. You've heard it. You've heard John probably sing it in concert. On the surface, it's about a garden, but again, you can make a metaphor for life in general and living in the world and, you know, starting things and watching them develop. So that's Garden Song by Dave Mallett, and I think that's the climax of this album. That was the second to last song on the second side. The album concludes with another simple song, like Life Is So Good, and this one is called Songs Of, with basic and short lyrics and a nice melody and instrumentation. So that last song, Songs Of, could be the explanation for the contents of this whole album. It doesn't seem to have really an overall theme. No mountains, no American West. Mostly we're hearing just about people and life. Yep. And so that is J.D., John Denver, self-titled album. I think the standouts on this album are What's on Your Mind, Johnny Be Good, South Wind, and of course, Garden Song. J.D., John Denver. Now, just like so many albums that we've talked about before, when you look this one up on eBay, you can get it in any format you want. You can get it in vinyl, on CD, on cassette, and yes, even on 8-track tape. But beware again of the CD for this one. You know what I'm going to say. Because as the producers often did, after John was gone and they reproduced all of his albums on CD, they took liberties and they added bonus tracks. And you know what I think of bonus tracks. And for J.D., John Denver, the bonus tracks that they put on the CD is the first side of the old album from 1970, Whose Garden Was This? And that's the songs Tremble If You Must, Sail Away Home, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Mr. Bojangles, and I Wish I Could Have Been There, Woodstock. Yeah. Okay. Do you think this is what he really would have wanted? I mean, look at the effort he went to put a different version of Berkeley Woman on here than he had just done a couple of years earlier. And then you're going to smack songs from 9 years earlier? You know, his music, his style, his intentions, the production, the instrumentation, it had all gone through a lot of changes in those 9 years from 1970 to 1979. So I think this is an insult. If anybody out there is one of the producers that smacked these songs onto this CD and you want to talk to me about it, okay, give me a call. But yeah, beware of the CD for JD. And no, I did not buy one to show it off to you. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of doing so. Before we get to the second real album of... I'm looking. Something's missing. Before we get to the second real album of 1979, we have another tangent to explore. On September 10th, 1979, John performed at Yap Eden Hall in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Evidently, the concert was recorded. And we now have a CD called The Legendary Amsterdam Broadcast from 1979. And you might look at this cover and you say, wow, you know, I've never seen that one before, but somehow it looks awfully familiar. Yeah, it should. because they used the same design that had been used for Live in London. Look at that, same blocky letter design. And so you might think, oh wow, this must be part of a series. No, not really. And this was from 1976. So this may have been done to make it seem as though it's part of a legitimate series, but no. If you are expecting on here something like this, or something like this, no. No, just no. This is bare bones production. First of all, let's look at the packaging. Okay. Yeah, it's a CD and you can't necessarily have so many other things. Okay, this CD probably came in 2022. It doesn't have a date on it, but things that I've seen online kind of indicate that it came out in 2022, this 1979 production. Okay, so we've got a nice picture of John. It's a typical one. The list of his band members and what they played. List of songs, but the song list is not correct. The song list on there and on here are not correct. They're missing a song, and they're missing Farewell Andromeda, Welcome to My Morning. They're missing 2 letters on 2 words. Bet on the Blue. It's Bet on the Blues. Although, to be fair, when John introduces it on here, you can't hear the S at the end of the word, so maybe somebody was just listening to what he was saying that these words were. And Johnny Be Good on here, you really need an E at the end of that surname. I mean, these are mistakes. But anyway, what are the songs that are on here? Okay, let's go through the list. Grandma's Feather Bed, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, Rippling Waters, Welcome to My Morning, Farewell Andromeda, Garden Song, Like a Sad Song, It Amazes Me, Matthew, Bet on the Blues, Fly Away, Johnny Be Good, Leaving on a Jet Plane, Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's Song, Calypso, and Sunshine on My Shoulders. Okay. Even if you didn't know that this was a concert from 1979, there are certain clues in that song list, right? You got Garden Song and Johnny Be Good from JD. You've got Rippling Waters and Bet on the Blues and It Amazes Me from the previous album, I Want to Live. Okay, so it all makes sense. The set list makes sense for a concert in 1979. What doesn't make sense to me is the quality of this recording. Musical quality is inconsistent, goes in and out of focus, shall we say. Some of the songs are clear and distinctive, others are just muddling. If there was editing, there is no evidence of this. It's just not good. The words awful and horrible come to mind. And I'm not quick to say this. And yet, during the concert, several times, John mentions that there's a television crew there recording the program for broadcast. Well, this is not the original broadcast recording. This is not the feed from that. It often sounds like it's being recorded in someone's living room with an old cassette recorder from 1979. That's what it sounds like. Let's not spend any more time on this one. It's not worth it. If you're a purist and you really want everything, you have been warned. All right. Instead, let's go back to 1979's real albums, because our lives were made exceedingly better in October 1979 with the release of John Denver and the Muppets, A Christmas Together. Yay! Just look at this full color cover. I'm going to hide. Look at that. Look at that. They're all there. All the characters are there. And on the inside, whoops, there goes the vinyl. On the inside are Christmas cards with the names of the songs and who sings them on it. Oh, how beautiful. And the original came with a poster. Yay! And evidently, I never put this up anywhere because there's no tape marks on the corners. Wow, good for me. So we have 13 songs on here and a recitation. John wrote 2 of the pieces. These are holiday songs that swing more to the popular side of the holiday and not to the religious one, of course. The album starts with the 12 Days of Christmas, which is a classic in its own right, because in this version, everybody gets their own line. John has the partridge in the pear tree, but you get to 5 golden rings and it's Miss Piggy. 5 gold rings. It's just terrific. More on that song in a little bit. 12 Days of Christmas is followed by Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, sung by John and Rolf. The Peace Carol, featuring Scooter. And then Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. In a round, all the people taking around, all the Muppets taking around, featuring Miss Piggy. Do you remember when John would appear on the Muppet Show and Miss Piggy would always say, "Oh, Jonathan." It was great. Anyway, Christmas is Coming is followed by John's song, A Baby Just Like You, which first appeared on his Rocky Mountain Christmas album back in 1975. And then we get Deck the Halls, and the first side ends with the beautiful and moving song written by Paul Williams, When the River Meets the Sea, sung by the whole cast, featuring Robin singing solo on the first verse. Do you remember all these characters? Hope you do. Second side starts out with the Beach Boys rocker, Little Saint Nick, done by the Muppets Rock Band, followed by Noel Christmas Eve 1913, which John sings alone, and then The Christmas Wish, written by Danny Wheatman, sung by Kermit, and then a special medley. John reads a Christmas story he wrote called Alfie, the Christmas Tree, and as he is reading that, he is backed by an instrumentation called Carol for a Christmas Tree. And then when the story is all done, the whole groups, the Muppets and John, sing together, It's in Every One of Us, written by David Pomerantz. It's in every one of us to be wise. It's wonderful. I think we should consider that the climax of this album. It's beautiful, very moving. And then winding down further, we have Silent Night, which the Muppets sing the first verse, Auf Deutsch. And then, while they hum in the background, John recites the story of how the song Silent Night came to be written. And then they all sing in harmony, another first verse with John singing a dust cant above. It's very peaceful. And of course, you have to do it. The album ends with a boisterous rendition of We Wish You a Merry Christmas. This is just about a perfect holiday album as you can get. Now, of course, this album represents the soundtrack for the TV special that was shown on December 5th, 1979, which I'm pretty sure I watched in real time. And the album was released on CD later, at least 4 different times, at least 4 different iterations with varying set lists, so I'm not even going to discuss those tangled webs. This is the original, except no other. I mean, I appreciate that you want to get the music out there, but can we please stick to the original lineup? This was in the days when people... There was a purpose to the song list and how it was crafted. You know what I think of that. Anyway, so now, if you've got some snow falling in your neighborhood and you're in a mellow and holiday mood, put this album on your stereo and you can pair it along with Rocky Mountain Christmas and Rocky Mountain High and Windsong. That's my winter afternoon set list. These will make for a wonderful background for whatever you happen to be doing on a snowy winter day. Oh, I just love. Don't you just love being reminded that John was with the Muppets? By the way, Alfie the Christmas Tree was also later released as a children's picture book, published in conjunction with the National Wildlife Federation in 1990. You can find some copies of this online in the $30 to $40 range. I wouldn't necessarily pay any more than that. It's a terrific book. It's exactly the same poem that he read on that album, on that TV show and on the album. It can be considered to be a rare volume, though. You don't find it. You don't find it in libraries. You don't find it on every children's bookshelf that you come upon. So if you have one, keep it safe. Don't let pets and small children chew on the corners of it. Put a note in it to your heirs that this is a sort of rare book. Okay, I'll be the Christmas tree. Let's go back here for a second, or a couple of seconds. Last time I saw John in person was in a concert at the Orpheum Theater in Minneapolis in December of 1996. For the first half of the concert, he sang his usual great songs. I did not write down the set list at the time. I wasn't used to doing that at the time, but it was a typical concert for him. And then after intermission was going to be all holiday songs because it was December. And so after we knew that he told us ahead of time that's what was going to happen. So after intermission, everything starts getting dark. A video screen shows up on the stage, which this is 1996. This didn't always happen. And what they played was the 12 Days of Christmas with him in the top hat and all the Muppets, and everybody's laughing. It was so terrific. And then when it was over and everybody laughed and clapped and he came out for the second part of the show, he said, "Who was that guy? Who was that guy?" Because it had been 17 years since they had recorded that, and then he led us, of course, in a holiday song fest, and it was wonderful. And that's my memory of this, and that's another reason why this album is special to me, because I remember that last concert that I saw him. So, there you have it. The years 1978, 1979, as they relate to John's albums. 45 years later, and we're still talking about them. Yep. And we have much more to keep talking about. In our next episode, we're going to launch into the 1980s. Can you imagine? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Anyway, I'm Corinne Smith. Thanks for watching. What do you remember about these albums? What do you remember about these songs? And wouldn't it be great to see John and the Muppets again? Anyway, I'm Corinne Smith. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.